Hello, everyone. This is Marita, one who catches lightning, with the Path of Ish podcast, Walking with Our Shadow, where we share ancient indigenous teachings of remembrance, all so we can walk and learn how to walk a path of radical self-love. Hello, everyone. It's such an honor and pleasure to take time today to enter into the circle, to greet it, to pause, to listen, to be. I've had several discussions over the past week of people who are at a standpoint or at a decision-making process of their life, at this fork in the road, you might say, and they are attempting to choose things and do things in a way that they've never done before. This space, this podcast, these conversations, because they are and held by indigenous people and teachings, are that kind of different space. It is a different way of being here, and I hope that you listen and find your own place in these circles. So before we begin and open up the circle, we will welcome an amazing, talented teacher who has been really growing over the past couple of years and makes Australia their home base. They've been traveling for a year, living van life, and have just returned back. So I was able to get on their calendar. So let's welcome Ash Bell.
Thank you, Marita. Yes, such a busy schedule. Glad I could squeeze you in. I should say the same for you. And let me preface this by saying in my introduction, you might recognize my voice and me from episode 21, back early on with the launch of your podcast, and also from our recent comedy routine on Instagram when you were in Melbourne last month.
Maybe we should just make this a whole comedy show instead of an interview, huh?
We can go down that direction. I think it's beginning. But thank you for having me back. Thank you. It's an honor to be here. I'm happy to be doing this podcast with you today.
Beautiful. Well, as you know, we open with a direction. So let's do that before we kind of jump into the circle together and start witnessing each other. So with gratitude, grace, and thanksgiving, we take time to recognize that we are stepping into a different space. Now, if you're at home and you don't have a practice of this, I highly recommend that while you listen to this, you walk into a room as a circle or sit down. This is an indigenous tradition to ask permission from the land to hold us. But so with that, let us approach the east, the south, the west, and the north. The guardians from those directions of whatever tradition you come from, acknowledging the elements also in the directions. We're asking these directions to hold us in our own water, our own fire, our own wind, and our own land. And as the circle in the east grants us permission to enter, we enter and we connect. We connect to the root of the planet. Now, we don't go digging down. We accept that which has been given to us based on our relationship. So let that root come up, right? Spring up. And then after that, let us connect to, of course, the stars. If you want to bring in stars or the sun or the moon, whoever you sit with the most, bring them into the circle as we take our place. With that, we declare the circle open. Okay. So it's been a while. You've been traveling, other than our comedy routine that we did the other day, our breakout comedy routine. I really want to start talking about that year of travel. What did it mean for you? How did it change your practices? what called you to it. And we'll just kind of go and talk as we go along and figure it out as we journey on the road.
It's a journey working with you, and it's a journey doing these podcasts with you because what people might not know is we just wing it, don't we, Marita, with no pre-questions or planning. So let's see where this road takes us. Lots of avenues to go down.
So let's talk about what called you to do a year on the road. What was that call?
If I be really honest, to answer that question initially, the calling was when I asked myself, if I die today, what have I left undone? That's where it began, that practice with you. And that sparked so much for me because I wasn't living my life and I didn't feel like I was having experiences or connecting to the world around me. So this shift occurred where I was like, I need to go see things and do things and experience things. So my husband and I bought a camper van and we converted her. Her name's Frankie. I'm sitting in her right now as we record this. We'll be waving to Frankie.
Waving to
Shout
Frankie.
out
Hi,
to
Frankie.
And we took off on the road. We took off on the journey to go be and explore, and it was life-changing. Exactly what I needed. The medicine and lessons were beyond what I expected them to be. But here we are now. I've taken a half lap around Australia and I'm landed recently back in Melbourne.
What's it like to be so at home, not having a home?
Good question. So at home. That was one of my biggest lessons, actually. And it's funny that this has come up right now because I had a very similar conversation with someone this morning. The lesson of being confronted with having to work on finding home within. There's so much expectation on the outside world and what's around us. And it was really scary at first, really scary. But now there's this like wholeness and comfort inside that I can be okay. I can find safety.
Tell us of, you and I had a conversation once about how the trees called you. Like as you got used to being on this road, it went from, wow, the practice of that we do the agenda clearing. If I die today, what have I left undone? And you did something about it. A lot of people don't. So amazing. I didn't know that. 5 gold stars. And then,
you didn't know? Oh, wow. No, that changed my life, Marita. The very first time you ran me through that.
Well, good. It worked. The practices work.
They work.
If you're willing, right? If you're willing. But then the conversation that I heard you as we connected while you were traveling became this almost love conversation between you and trees and rocks and elements and sacred places. Mm-hmm. When did you feel kind of that shift be from like, oh, I want to travel because I haven't seen places and let me get that Instagram pic in that place that everyone does, to truly wanting to just be with the trees?
I distinctly remember a time when it was before we had left on our van travels, and I learnt about the mountain ash tree in Tasmania, the tallest trees in the southern hemisphere. And I was like, I need to go see those trees. like there was just this pull to be with them, to experience them, to go to this specific region where they were and to learn from them. And I think I was watching a documentary or something that came up on TV, and I was like, I'm so sick of like learning about the world just by like viewing it or reading. I want to like be there. And so that was the beginning of the adventure of following the trees. We put the van on a ferry, 10-hour ferry, to get across from Victoria to Tasmania, going down to this remote region in Tasmania to find the mountain ash. Being with them and learning from them. So they're the tallest flowering trees in the southern hemisphere. They're like 100 meters tall. And the lesson from these trees, like the biggest lesson from them, was the lesson of they don't grow in isolation. They rise together.
That is beautiful. Rise from the ashes together.
Yeah, and because they're mountain ash, my name's Ash, there was also that connection. So they're my friends, good friends.
Now, this has been a big shift for you in your life, right? To go from just like philosophically talking about nature to truly being in deep relationship. How has that shift happened, and how can people walk in a way like that?
How has it happened? Happened from learning from an indigenous teacher. That's how it happens, to shift my mind and conditioning and being that humans aren't greater than any other being on the planet, and to learn to be in relationship with them, because I've definitely grown up in a very colonized way and very like rigid mindset. So the journey has been sitting in these cultural exchanges with you for starters. That's big and life-changing on its own. And then the more I learn about myself, the more I learn about and be amongst the elements and living on the road. So I'm outdoors a lot. The observation and learning and seeing how things grow and move. And I was in a lot of places where you're really dependent on weather and climate and tides. So all these pieces of the puzzle of working in relationship just began to land and deepen more and more.
Now, for those of others who are starting a journey or are curious about really what it means to sit with in an indigenous circle and really have things drop, because I see it when it happens to you, right? And you're like, oh my God, right? It takes time, right?
Yeah, it takes time. It takes so much time.
Yeah.
Not in a bad way.
Yeah.
But to give it time.
Yeah. I think people want to be able to like come in with, 10 bullet points of things that they want to walk out with, and they want to walk out with a certificate or, proof that they know something, but these circles are really different. And how has that, I mean, I know it's made you crazy at times, but how has it helped you to really invest in relationship instead of in information?
Yeah, I feel like it's been like this, again, time, because I remember moments, but one of the things that you've described recently that it's landed more is understanding the slow medicine. So for my being and my way of thinking and feeling to shift over time. clarify the question again. Sorry.
No.
I was like, where am I going with this?
No, I think you're saying that, it takes time. It takes time for the shift, and really kind of starting to understand, this is slow medicine. This is a way to talk about it so that people don't think it's not just instant gratification, because the minute you say yes to any of these circles, your life starts to change. Things start moving. We always warn people before they come in. It's like, only step in if you really, truly desire change, And you've gone through a lot of change and learned a lot of things. And I want to talk about the slow medicine of cacao and that relationship that you've been building to the point that you've planted cacao slowly.
Slowly. Is that the story you want me to tell?
You can tell any story you want.
What Marita's referring to is my recent trip to in amongst van life. I popped over to Hawaii, as you do, from Australia to Hawaii to go visit and plant some cacao trees. One tree took me 3 days. That is slow medicine. So many lessons and feels, and those trees have received my blood, sweat, and tears. I think segue back to what you were saying is things aren't hard and fast and quick and just about ticking boxes and then moving on to the next thing. So much of what I've learnt is to move away from the bypassing, to move away from if things feel tricky or painful or murky, it's not about moving to a more positive or pushing or moving towards a more positive space. It's actually learning to sit in all of it. So that's the biggest thing with like learning in an indigenous space, and a lot of the lessons that about being an achiever and the academics of just getting the certificate, the shift into like being and accepting where you're at, and that includes feeling all the feels, not just skipping to like I'm happy now, so I'm done and complete, on to the next thing. So that's this journey with the cacao tree as well, feeling it all, learning it all, then actually planting it into the ground.
Exactly. And you said something really important, I think blood, sweat, and tears. And I was listening to a podcaster video from Kumu Ramsey, who I've had the honor to sit with a few times here in Hawaii. And he was talking about there's nothing that replaces blood, sweat, and tears. Nothing can replace blood, sweat, and tears that you give to Mother Earth. If you're willing to do that, she will give back so much. It's that exchange. And are you willing to do that? You've traveled this year, not in like, that mood of like, oh, I can just go wherever I want because I have access, or, jump to Hawaii because I have access. You've worked. So you've eliminated the carbon footprint of the places that you have traveled to and volunteered at places and worked with indigenous people around Australia. And I just want to talk about how that's kind of a different way to travel in the world, instead of just like, oh, I'm living my best life and I want to experience these things because they're about me, and really how you've learned how to travel in deep relationship, right? If I'm going to travel this amount, that means I'm going to have to give this amount of blood, sweat, and tears, whether it's on a crock farm, whether it's,
yes,
whether it's, planting, cacao, whether it's helping out in a cafe, you always give back. And I think that not many people do that. That is not part of the culture that the Western society has. It's just like take, 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 take. So let's talk about that shift for you, and how did it feel to be in reciprocal relationship as much as possible?
Yeah, it's really powerful. Really quickly, I let go of the fact that I wasn't going to be a polished travel Instagram influencer. that wasn't that wasn't the van life direction I was going in. That stuff's hard, and it's not reality, because really connecting with places and people and the environment is actually being present in it and working, and that's not the glamorous Instagram things that you see out there. I worked at a croc farm. Isn't that wild? I mean, I didn't last long, but I love crocs. But I gave it a whirl.
Why not? I mean, at least you tried, right? And plus, you could give a story to say, like, I worked at a croc farm. I can't say that. Like, kudos to you. That's amazing.
I was in the Northern Territory. Actually, no, it wasn't. I was in Western Australia, but the northwest of Australia is like croc territory. It's like croc region. So everywhere is being like croc safe and croc aware, and just crocodiles everywhere. And this one place that we were in, there was like an opportunity for some like work. We didn't even know what we were getting into. And then it turns out it was an old croc farm with like 20 crocs there. And again, just like these weird and wonderful opportunities of life to just learn and to like be around crocodiles, really see how they work and function. And they're amazing. They're amazing creatures to be right up and close to. And that's the stuff, like being there with like your hands getting dirty, sweaty. Oh my gosh, was it like hot and sweaty? That is the stuff that like integrates into the body. Like you don't forget. It's not just getting like this polished photo of a area. Like when you're in it, it like lands in your body. There's a depth to it. So yeah, blood, sweat, and tears in so many different areas, and not just the crocs, like being in areas of Australia where there's a lot more connection to our Australian Aboriginal indigenous people too, because a lot of like the cities are very white, and we don't have this connection on a day-to-day basis to be with First Australians. And it's powerful to learn, just to learn from people, and to be in little towns and remote communities and see how people live and work and communicate and celebrate. And yeah, there was a lot. There's a year, so I'm like being like really vague on stuff now, but there was like a year of just intensity and lots of different things that were experienced.
And as you kind of land back in Melbourne, how are you adjusting? What are the practices that are keeping you in you as your home? Because it can be weird to adjust from, being on the go all the time, and now like you're like, oh, I have to water the plants, things like that.
How am I adjusting? I'm adjusting. Working on it.
Oh my God,
life isn't always easy. The climate has been hard, but the thing that has helped me so much is to remain outdoors as much as possible. And you gave me that very good reminder yesterday to like get out and work on the land, and I'm like back again. that I needed that so much. Got caught up with city life, the doing. It's a good reminder. I was weeding, working with the agave, planting plants, talking to trees. All that stuff is important, and I've realized is important to my life every day. Can't forget it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so easy. Sometimes I get all like, if I've had a lot of like meetings, in a day, like I get really discombobulated and I have to just go outside and start weeding. Maybe one of the advantages of being no sprays, we always have weeds, but it just clears my mind to connect back to the land, and the land is nurturing us. And so I agree. There's something about getting dirty, getting and letting go of what you think you've accomplished in the day, and just communing, and not just communing and taking, but giving. I try to, my mantra that was given to me as I went to Australia, and even before that, stuff like that, was give more than you take. Give more than you take. And I've been really feeling into what does that mean, because we all get scared of like, oh, what if I don't have enough for me? But what I've realized is the times when I'm present, like fully present with what I'm doing or who I'm with, that is a form of giving. It's not the tasks and trying to do more tasks. It's if you're present, you're giving more. It could be just that. And so maybe only weed 10 minutes or 10 hours. Who cares, right? It doesn't matter. But it's that intentionality to connect and not just do a task. I think that is, for me, has been really a shift, a deeper shift. I've always known it and I've always taught it, but now it's at a really different level that I haven't experienced before. It's beyond the bone, and stuff like that. So that's been a good journey to be on. Let's talk about cacao a little bit more. Where is your relationship with cacao now? How has it grown? Have you any fun new blends that you're drinking?
I love cacao. Cacao has been a friend of mine for a long time now. I'm getting closer and closer, deepening our relationship. Again, planting the cacao tree was just another step in our very close bond. One thing to drink cacao and sit in ceremony, but to actually plant a tree changes so much. Where's my relationship with cacao? I've offered cacao to so many places in Australia. There are so many corners of the country that have been gifted cacao. Like, her love is spreading everywhere, which is amazing and powerful. And I feel like I can almost anchor into those areas as well, just from the offerings that are being given to the ocean and the desert and the trees. At the moment, I'm sitting with, I mix it up a little. I mix it up a lot, actually.
Well, you have more access than most people, so.
For those of you who don't know, I'm the Australian cacao fairy. So for anyone who's wanting cacao and who lives in Australia, Merida ships the cacao to me and then distribute across the country. I'm sitting with the cacao, if you want to talk a little bit about that. And the collaboration blends that you've done with Dr. Paula. The Sanctuary is the one I drank yesterday with the lavender and chamomile. I think that was right. That's correct. Yeah. Yes. And always the trusty go-to is the original Hamakua Coast. New Beginnings, East Side, that is
Mm-hmm.
always a blend, or not a blend, the original base of a lot of the blends, and a go-to for a lot of ceremonies, the cacao I share with people when I hold ceremonies. So yeah, I've got a few happening.
Now, you've been in my ceremonial training for ever since we began it, and we were one of the first to really kind of, in this time period, launch one. And now everyone has one. I just literally got 2 emails today. I was like, oh. And they're getting longer. They're like 6-9 months. I was like, this is really interesting. We were ahead. We were right there.
Yeah,
How
we
has
rode the wave.
catch the wave, right? How are our circles, facilitator circles, different than kind of what's being offered out there?
Well, I haven't taken what's being offered out there, but I can see what's being offered. I wouldn't cheat on you, Marita. Been there from the beginning. One of the things I love about your classes is you will meet people exactly where they're at, or the group exactly where they're at. So every training that you've put out there has been different in their own way. It's not super rigid, or, I mean, there's method to the madness, right? There's a goal of things you want people to learn and come away with. But we're sitting in deep relationship with this medicine and really learning so much about ourselves and how we interact with the environment around us, and how to actually live and be in ceremony and circle. There's like this, I don't know the word, but what I know from my experience, I've just had a mental blank, so I can't remember the word, but from what I know from my journey, my experience is that and I'm still working on it, compartmentalized my life so much. There was like my spiritual self, and going to class and doing my business and working with clients and having like my spiritual life, and then would like switch and go when I was like in different settings or like living another part of my life, that it was like so separate. But what you teach brings it all together so we can just be whole in our lives in every moment of every day.
Yeah, it's a different approach to teaching. Many people think that to teach ceremony, you have to give scripts, or you have to give, everyone's always asking for recipes, right? And ceremony is the being, not the doing. That's what we say. And it's about deep relationship. It's about blood, sweat, and tears, and reciprocity, and giving back, and sitting with beings for months, sometimes years, till they talk to you, until they give you, till you've earned the lessons that they want to teach you. Some will teach you immediately, and some will take a long time. And I think that can be discombobulating for people, because even though what we're offering is, there's a course in miracles, we're offering a course in freedom, right? Your freedom, your right to be, your truly to choose who you want to be. Because at the end of the day, a facilitator, what they are is, they need to hold deep relationship. They need to become the medicine of whatever they're being in relationship with, as well as other things, right? You're just kind of, and so many people think and live that compartmentalized, and they think it's a show. And we teach people to show up as honestly as they can, with protection, of course, and lead from that. And so I think it's harder for people who want that script or want that receta, So, what do you have to say to that, Ash?
Yeah. You're teaching everyone the energetics behind it, not just the words or the performance of ceremony or what it looks like, or it's not the recipe. You're going so much deeper in how to sit in relationship with alliances, different relationships, not just cacao, what other relationships you can build on to work with. They're going to support yourself as an individual and collective and a circle that you're holding. So there's, the depth, boundaries, very important. So many elements of the energetic weaving and the weaving of our parts. So it's important. And it's hard if you want to be a facilitator and you're like, okay, I just want like the words and give me the run of show on how to do it. And I'll just show up and this is my step by step. Like, no. It doesn't work like that. I mean, but the beauty of that is that everyone brings their own medicine. So we can, I mean, I've sat in every class, but every person is learning in the same course, learning the energetics, sitting with cacao, building a relationship with cacao, but everyone is also stepping into their own medicine and how unique they are as a being, and being able to show up and be themselves in the world. That I love sitting in other people's ceremonies because there's the depth, obviously, because they've learned from you, but then it's so unique because they've learned to be them. And that is so powerful.
That is powerful.
Yeah. Yeah. Good work, teacher. You're awesome.
You're hilarious. So we recently launched EEK. So let's talk a little bit about EEK because you're one of the members who have helped me. It took me 3 years to kind of put it together, and we launched a ceremony and we launched a training. So just tell people in your own words your experience of the ceremony and your experience of the training.
Yeah. So EEK, the 3 breath practice. Live launch in Melbourne in May. My God, it was amazing. I'm trying to avoid swearing.
You can go ahead.
So I want to be like, this shit was awesome.
Yeah, go ahead. The shit was awesome. There we go.
Yeah.
Keep it real.
Yeah, we started with the ceremony and it was huge and powerful, and I was going to say Melbourne, but I think even Australia hasn't, the world, let's go bigger, hasn't seen anything like this before.
Yeah.
It was, I keep using the word powerful, but how else do I describe it? Of like, people really were asked and invited to be honest with themselves because people want change. People really want change, but not everyone is actually willing to do what it takes to change. And this was an opportunity for them to like get them to know themselves and really be confronted with that and then make a choice for their own possibilities, potential. I don't know if I'm allowed to say more details of it, but we did a practice where, like I said at the beginning, even asking people, if you die today, what have you left undone? That was part of it, going through that agenda clearing practice and then jumping over the threshold of what they're letting go of into the new.
Something better.
Huge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how was this ceremony? And again, we call it's a ceremony, right? Because there's a lot of breathwork practices that don't have ceremonies. You know, they have exercise, right? Yoga, or meditations, yoga, right? Or they have just, people breathing together and doing that thing, So what is it like to be in ceremonial space to hold you versus, being out in the world and bringing your doona and your whatever and laying down on the ground and breathing and crying. Like, it's, what's it like to be in an indigenous ceremonial space held by an elder?
It's strong. It's strong and it's protected, and there is so much work that goes on in preparation to have that groundedness and that energy that held the space. I mean, I've been with you on the journey, but it's that, I mean, it's not light and fluffy. It's contained and it's supported, and people can be witnessed and held in everything that's coming up in order for it to be witnessed in a way that's releasing like shame or the heaviness and all those like yucky feelings that people hang on to. There's like permissions. There's permissions for all of it. So very different to these huge events that go on. And yeah, what you're describing is like, what's like the breath work that just like activates and then it's like really intense. But this involves like the integration part.
Yeah, that's true. That's the thing. If anything is created and you are still colonized and you've created it in a colonized space, it will not free you completely. And usually those breath practices are about releasing, not about jumping into something better, right? As we say here, you have to cut, and then you have to find something better and to fill yourself up. And that means deep relationship. I need to not have hope, it's prayer and action, but really say, wow, if I'm going to let go of this. And I remember someone was like, I don't even know what to step into. What's bigger than this? I go, maybe the unknown. And they're like, okay, that is big, right? And that's okay. You're not stepping into a planned life, right? And we saw some powerful things that people left behind, like genocide and losing their partners, and just a lot of things that people were finally, after years and years and years or generations, were able to finally let go and step into something other. And you might be like, yeah, well, Marita, they went back. And I can tell you, they've reached out to me and they're like, I do not feel the same. I don't carry that anymore. I wake up looking for it and it's gone, and instead I've replaced it with the unknown, let's say, and so I sit with that because it's much bigger, and it's okay that I don't know how it's going to materialize and fill. So you're going to be running some of these ceremonies. So everyone stay tuned. Ashbell, what's your thing? Ashbell.com?
.com.au.
.com.au.
Australia based.
I think you're launching some maybe September or November. I'm not sure. You're going to be doing some ink ceremonies and possibly.
Yes.
These are only being offered live in Melbourne. So if you're interested in this and you're in another part of the world and you decide to go and do the ceremony and maybe stay for the training, Ash will put you to work on the land so you can eliminate your carbon footprint.
Yes, a win-win for everyone.
And it'll help you integrate everything.
Yes.
Ash, what else have you got going on? I know you have a few offers, so let's talk about that so people can connect to those.
Yeah. Always something happening. There's always lots to talk about as well. It's so funny how time flies.
Yeah.
So many things that we can continue to discuss. But what's happening? Just restocked my website. So for those who are wanting to purchase cacao, a big shipment was delivered recently and restocked that. So that's on my website, ashbell.com.au. Got a retreat coming up in July with Vesna, who you interviewed recently. That is a cacao and sound exploration retreat, and that's on the Mornington Peninsula, just outside of Melbourne, and that is going to be incredible. Such a good weekend. Amazing medicine. Vesna and I, like, very different, but complement each other really well. So whoever's signing up for this retreat is in for a treat. Plus, we're working with cacao, and we're both work with sound in different ways too. And we've got some other things brewing that will be live soon. I teach sound healing, singing bowls, and I'm going to have some cacao ceremonies coming up soon, also both online and in person. So lots of things to be part of.
Yeah, and both you and Bess and I want to take a time to plug the fact that you both have studied extensively for long periods of time in whatever you offer. You're not just kind of, I mean, we wing it, but we wing it from a very deep space, at the Path of Vinci Cuatro Manos. We rely on our relationships to carry. We don't rely on a 2-hour, course or things like that. So when you're sitting with Vesna or Ash, you're sitting with people who are truly living the struggle of what it means to be a human being in this time and showing up for it to the best of their ability with their body, their mind, and their essence, and all the other parts, working towards really being present instead of escaping from this planet, and learning how to really become the medicine and the 400 iterations of themselves. And I would highly recommend sitting with these two beings because they bring a lot of depth.
Thank you.
Anything else, Ash? Anything else you want to chat about?
I feel like that feels pretty complete. We can have a part 3 in the future at some point. There's so much that goes on in my life that I could talk about
forever and ever and ever. Well, beautiful. Thank you, Ash Bell, for spreading the medicine of cacao across Australia, for giving offerings, and for living a life truly of reciprocity, of giving more than you take instead of being self-centered, giving more than you take to all the kingdoms on this planet. I witness you in your transformation and how you live your daily life of medicine. So with gratitude and thanks, we thank the east, the south, the west, the north, those guardians above, below, and on this plane. And thank you for all of the beings and relationships that showed up, cacao, the ash tree. We always know there's rocks and uluru in there. And we always know that there's camels and crocs and tides and moons. So thank you so much for supporting this, for being part of our story and allowing us to learn how to be Shide. Once again, it is with deepest gratitude that I bow to you for joining me on this podcast, this episode, this circle, this plática, this meditation, this remembering. I hope that you have stayed curious. I hope to see you in the circle again next week. So make sure that you like or follow. Until then, may you be blessed with abundance of peace and radical self-love.